Hello, hello. How's it going, everybody? My intro did not work, which is terrible, but I'm going to see if we can't fix that for next time. But welcome to Restore Animation Episode 2. I'm excited to have you guys here with me. We're going to take a look at a really cool shot today that I'm incredibly excited about. It's going to be an action shot where our main character is sort of spinning around an axe. And we're going to jump into that. But we're going to talk about a variety of things today as we get more into the meat and potatoes of what animation is in this action shot. We're going to mess with camera a little bit. We're going to talk about some of best practice when you're animating and some of the tools that I use to be more efficient and more productive in the way that I animate. And so one of the things that we find is incredibly important when you're working as an animation artist is speed. A lot of times we can get bogged down the sort of nitty gritty of shots, and I want to talk a little bit about how to speed that process up as well. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. I'm going to share my scene really quickly. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to write in the chat real quick just to make sure everybody is here. All right. There we go. Rhythm, good to see you, brother. Thanks for jumping in. And guys, feel free to ask any questions you guys have in the chat. We're streaming to all the platforms right now. So we've got Facebook, we've got Twitter, we've got Twitch, we've got YouTube. Most of those platforms will let you directly sort of communicate with me. So feel free to chat as I'm doing this, and I'll try to answer any questions you guys have directly there as well. But jumping right into the scene, this is the one we're going to be looking at today. This is shot 240 from the short film that I'm currently working on. So let me show you guys what I've got going on here. So this is a shot where we've got one of the main character who's going to be spinning around an axe in his hand. And right now I just have a couple of poses sort of planned out here, nothing too intricate or too involved. I just want to get the main action of that shot in here. And I'm going to see right now if I can't share. Let's see. I want to see if I can't share my Premiere file as well. Let's see. Yeah, so I'm going to share my Premiere file so you guys can see sort of where this shot comes in the sequence. But basically, what's happening here is our character is going to be spinning around this axe. And so that's the action right there. And so let me switch back over to Maya. Boom. So that's the basic idea. So I sort of took some poses out that I had initially because they weren't working. I just want to have the key poses of this action ready to go. So right now I have about, let's see. So you guys can see my timeline here. I've got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main poses sort of in here. So with the action that I actually want the character to feel like he's sort of, as I can get up and sort of act this out. I want the character to sort of feel like he's sort of spinning this thing around and sort of stepping towards the other character in order to deal this blow. And so I don't have that in here yet. I just had the main poses, but that's one of the things I want to make sure we convey in this animation. So that's one of the things we're going to be adding in as well. But in the process of doing this, one of the things I wanted to show you guys today is a lot of times with pre-visualizing these scenes, I'll just use temporary objects. So this axe right here does not have a skeleton. I mean, it's not rigged at all. It's just sort of like a stationary object that I attach to his hand so that when his hand rotates, the axe rotates, right? And so it's sort of like a stand-in prop, I guess, if you will. So I actually have an axe here that has already been rigged. It's ready to go. And it's set up in such a way that I can attach it to the hand, but then also independently sort of manipulate it, as you would do if you had an axe in your hand. And you know, it's not attached to the hand at all times. Sometimes I could throw it up in the air. I can do whatever I want with it. And it's important that I have a rigged axe to do that with, because just an object will not allow me to do that. So what does that process look like for me? Well, what I like to do then is I'm about to jump into this shot, is I find a pose with the character where I can line it up, because I like the pose that I have here, but I want to make sure that this new axe that I add in um, is going to get me the same. I'm not losing any ground in terms of animation. I don't want to have to redo things again. So the process for me sort of like looks like lining this up as closely as I can to where the other axe is. And that's a little bit of a process sometimes, just sort of trying to figure out, rotating it into place. You take a little bit of noodling just to get it as close as I can. And that's on a variety of axes. It can be a rotational thing. You kind of just have to eyeball it. But I get as close as I can so I'm not reinventing the wheel with the pose of the axe. And like that's feeling, if I check in all angles, like that's feeling pretty good. I could probably rotate this a little bit just to try to get a little bit more on there. So yeah, that's it. That's the general idea. And then I would take that and I will replace the old axe. So what I'll do is I'll select this guy and sort of, let's see if I can grab this. Okay. So I'll show my hypergraph. I'll figure out where this guy lives. So he's right here. So then I'll take this and I'll move this axe back into place. And now that I know that this one's right here, I'm just going to take that and I am going to delete it. And what that's going to allow me to do now is I can go ahead and parent this axe into the proper place. And the way I typically do that is I'll grab you want to grab the parent first and then the child. Then I go up here and I adjust this and I put on animation, constrain, parent, constrain. So now this hand, when I move it, is actually going to have the axe go with it. But as I said before, now I have the ability to actually rotate the axe within his hand independently, which is really important because I want to have him sort of do like a flare with it when he's rotating it. So that's what that process kind of looks like. Now that I've got the actual axe in his hand, I can refine that pose a little bit because this looks pretty bad. I don't know if you guys can see this, but like the axe is sort of crashing through a little bit and like the hand pose is kind of terrible. So we're going to adjust that. We're going to adjust that a little bit. So let me see. Let's go ahead and start refining this pose. So I did this a little bit on the last stream. But I'm going to go ahead and start to get this pose in a place that makes sense. And adjust these fingers accordingly so that nothing is sort of crashing through. This. And then we talked about this a little bit in the last cast, but this idea that fingers that are on the outside sort of need to be angled in to make it feel more like it's a solid grip on the object. Now here's a good case of now I'm starting to pose it and I feel like, the axe is sort of in a place where it shouldn't be. So I actually have the ability now to go in here and grab the axe after I've parented it, and I can move it. I can adjust a little bit and it's not going to break my animation. So I can sort of push this up a little bit. it's a push and pull. You know, you have to figure out, okay, now that works for the most of the fingers. Now I need to adjust the pinky again, and that kind of a thing. So it's a little bit of a process there, but that's the way I typically approach it. And you just sort of dial in what that pose is going to be. Now, that pose should be a lot cleaner, a lot better. I'm recognizing that this finger probably should be rotated the opposite direction a little bit. Let's see. That's feeling a little bit better. And the only other thing I'm seeing right now is that this thumb shouldn't be crashing through. So typically at this point, I'd want to like jump back over to my regular view, world view, to make sure this is looking okay. And it's looking all right. I'll probably adjust it as we move forward, but now I have the real axe in there, so I'm feeling much better about the capabilities of what I'm going to be able to accomplish with this axe in his hand. So moving right along. Now this axe should stay, fingers crossed, as I go back through the poses I've already made. Yes, it is. Perfect. So remember, we want him coming towards camera. I've hidden the other character in the scene right now, but basically I want this intense interaction where he's sort of stepping towards the character that's screen left. I want the shot to feel intimidating. I want him to feel like he's really coming forward in space. This is 3D animation, so why don't we push that 3D element and really make him feel like he's coming towards us, the viewer, which is why I put the camera where I did. I want it almost to feel like he's coming at us, and we're the ones who are going to be taking on this angry dwarf. So in this first pose, I like the idea of him sort of starting more, his chest rotated away from us. And then what I'm going to have him basically do is he's going to take a step with his left foot and transfer the weight over, and then sort of rise up out of that as he's rotating. Now this shot's unique because typically the way that I would work, and the way that I will work to start with, is getting these key poses in. But this hand animation and the action that's happening with this hand, it's a lot more detailed and a lot more movement happening than his general body. So the way that I would approach that is I'll start out with these key poses, but pretty quickly here, I'm going to sort of make that its own movement. Typically, I like to key all the animation keys on one frame together. That's the way I work. It keeps things clean, keeps the animation. Again, we talked about speed. It's just so much faster and cleaner when you work that way, to make sure that all of your animation for all of the keys stays together. And then it allows you to look at it in nice graphic shapes like this, because at the end of the day, animation is all about the pose and animation is the movement between those poses. And if the poses aren't great, the animation's not going to be that great. So what I'm going to start doing now is sort of dialing in those poses. So one of the ways that I like to do that, and I will do it here, is I'm going to select all of him and all of the axe, and I'm going to select them. And I am going to, so now that he's isolated, I can turn the lighting on and we can start to see what his silhouette looks like. Now, I need to find these lights to see if this is a good idea of what, it's not too detailed, right? I think what I'm going to do though, is I'm going to push this even further. And I'm going to find the lights that are in the scene, and I'm actually going to turn them. I'm going to turn them down because I want to see even more. I want to see even more of just his silhouette. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the lights in the scene. So I'm going to back up a little bit. So the main light here, main light is right here. I'm just going to grab this light, and I know it's at a 0.07, but I'm just going to turn it down. And this light is at a 1. I'm just going to turn it down. So I'm basically just taking these lights and I'm just like turning them off, And now I've got a really clear silhouette of what this dude looks like, and it'll help me better figure out how to make these poses stronger. So here we go. So here's our first pose. Strong enough, but I think I'm going to get in here and adjust it a little bit because it could be stronger. So I'm going to grab this arm. And try to figure out. Let's see. Parent mode. Okay, here we go. So when I move this hand, the axe is going to come. Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to adjust this up a little bit. Turn off some of this stuff that's slowing us down. I'm going to adjust this pose a little bit so that we get a nice graphic shape here at the beginning. So I don't want any gaps or anything or any lights coming through. I just want this to be a nice sort of A-frame silhouette. I'm going to grab this hand, sort of bring it out a little bit, give us more of like an A shape, and then rotate the hand a little bit so we see that. Okay. And he's continuing to maintain the eye line, which is nice. So that's a pretty good starting place for a first pose. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to switch back over to make sure that this is streaming right. Perfect. Okay. Okay. So first pose, we've got that one in. Next pose, I want to have him go ahead and start. I like where this hand is, but it's a little parallel. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to adjust this one way or another, but I'll probably rotate it so the hand is not so perpendicular to camera. It's something more interesting with the pose. At this point, he should start moving from screen left to screen right because he's going to be taking a step over onto his left foot. So as I'm blocking out these main poses, I want to take that into account. So the main way that I do that is I will grab the hands, sort of have him move screen left a little bit. So it's almost like he's going this way. And this is going to be the down position of the step. So I'm going to go ahead and push him down a little bit in space. So he's stepping down over here. And then if I go to the next pose, he's going to be all the way screen right. So he's stepped down and then he's coming up. So if we look at that in perspective mode, this is not the camera we're using, but this is just helping us animate. He steps right and steps over. So I think I need to push him down a little bit to sell the idea that he's going down on his step. We can feel the weight of what he's doing. And so now he's screen right. I'm going to not have him come up so high in frame yet. And then in the next pose, we want to keep him over there screen right. We're going to have him rise up more in the frame. So let's take that from the beginning. So over here, steps right. We want to keep him more screen right. And he's going to stay screen right. And have him come up a little bit. So, boom. So we've got one more pose here where we need him to stay screen right. And we want him to stay up in the air. So we're going to push him higher right here. Awesome. Okay, so generally speaking now, we have him moving from screen left to screen right, and he kind of looks like he's taking a step, right? The thing that we're missing, though, is we're missing all the flair and what he's doing with his hand, but we're also missing this element of him coming towards camera, right? So I'm going to start to play with that a little bit. And the important thing to know about that is you want to make sure that, you can fake a step or a walk cycle, and you may not see what's happening below the waist, but it's important to I animate that a lot of times, even though you don't see that on screen, because it just helps. It helps you actually know what they're supposed to be doing physically. Um, and that affects the rest of the body with what's happening above the waist. So a lot of times I'll just go ahead and like actually put that the animation on the lower part of the body in there. In this case, he should be stepping forward. So um, what I would need to do in this case is go ahead and grab all of the elements that are going to be stepping forward, his upper body. So he needs to be moving. Let me make sure that, yeah, he needs to be moving forward in space, right? So as he's stepping forward. And I just want to double check on the main camera that it feels like he's coming towards us. Oops. Let's see. Yeah, it's feeling like he's starting to step towards us. So stepping towards us. The next frame, I got to push him forward a little bit. And the next frame after that, he's still going to be coming forward, but he only took one step. So I want to make sure not to push him too far forward because I don't want his weight to go over his foot. But what we're going to do right now is I'm going to put this foot back where it should be, generally speaking. Again, we're not going to see it, so it doesn't really matter all that much. But I'm going to generally put this where it probably should be. And then as he's stepping forward, I'm going to go ahead and put that foot out in space so I know how far I can physically go with this character and his step that's going to feel believable. So let's just say he was stepping. Now he might step this far, right? So I'm going to plant the foot right there. And then as the body moves over top of it, I'll get a sense of like how far he can go. Do you see what I mean? Like now he's over here and I know like that's about how far I would go before he fell over. So I'm not going to push his upper body any further than that. So I'm going to make sure that foot stays there for the rest of the frames. And I'm going to grab his hand elements again. Where are you? Hand. There we go. So I'm going to sort of push him forward, and then we're going to keep him up here. And he might just drift forward just a little bit. I think this might be too much, but we'll see. And then I'm just going to key this frame as the same. So now we've got our character sort of stepping forward into space. And let's see what that looks like from camera view. One thing I mentioned last time is that I have that autosave sort of popping up all the time. I don't know if you can see that on my screen, but it's a good reminder. I set it to every 5 minutes or something just to remind myself to save. Look, I've already gone how long and I haven't saved. And I can tell you many times you get sucked into like this tunnel vision where you're animating and you totally forget to save. It could be an hour or two later and then the program crashes and you lose everything. So just word of wisdom to you, make sure you have some sort of a clock set or you can set it in this program as well, just to remind you to save. Okay, now he feels like he's actually sort of stepping towards us, right? One of the things I want to make sure I'm doing as I'm continuing to do this, I mentioned this idea that I want him to maintain eyesight. He's trying to intimidate the other guy, right? So I want to make sure periodically that I'm going back and I'm trying to maintain, let's see, eyesight. His head should be sort of focused over here on the guy he's stepping towards. So see his head's down here. It needs to be up and his gaze sort of needs to be over here. And I can adjust his eyes to accomplish this as well. But it's one of those things where you just kind of gotta feel it out. I want his head to sort of be down and sort of menacing at this point. So this is a good example of me fixing that issue with his eyes. So here, I'm actually going to fix that with his eyes. I want to keep his head more down like that. So what I'm going to do at that point then is I'm going to jump back in, grab his eye line, which is right here. Let's see. Nope, that's not it. Where's your eyes, dude? Is this them? Yeah, I think these are the ones. Yeah, there we go. All right. Let's grab your eyes and make sure that you're looking where you're supposed to be looking. Hey, that's a good pose. And you can play with this as you go along. I don't want to get too married to it. I'm just trying to generally keep it where it's supposed to go. Looks like something I'm probably going to have to do in this case is raise his eyebrows because we're losing his pupils. So I'm going to grab these eyebrows just really quick. And I'm going to raise them up so we don't obscure his pupils. We want to see where he's looking, but we also want him to look angry. He still looks angry. I'm still happy with that. Like, you can still see that he is upset about what's happening. So as I rotate this up, I can get these eyes back up here, and he can still keep his head down and look towards the dude he's trying to fight. Yeah, so we're going to rotate this over here a little bit and then copy that to the back end. So let's see if this will let us play this through. It's going to have to buffer really quick, so just give it a second to sort of buffer this whole shot, and it should play it real time. Let's see. Yeah, that's what we got so far. Nothing crazy, but you get this. You get the right idea. It looks like he's sort of stepping towards it. And what we're doing here is we're adding detail to the actual shot. So as I get in here and refine, it's going to look more fluid. But this is only 5 poses for this shot. So what I think I'd like to do next is start. I'm gonna adjust the camera a little bit so it feels a little bit more dramatic for this action shot. But then I'm going to get in there and I'm actually going to start animating the axe sort of flipping around, doing what we want it to do. I'm going to add some more breakdowns for it because it's the most important thing about this shot. I want to see like the flail of how good this guy is with his axe. So let's take a look at the camera really quick. It looks like, it's slowly pushing in. And in the world of cinematography, basically what I'm trying to tell with this camera move is like focus on what's happening here. But the more intensely you push in, the more intense the moment is. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go in here into my graph editor. And I'm going to push that camera, which show camera. You guys can see my camera right here. This is my camera. I'm actually just going to push it. I'm going to push it in Z so that it feels like it's really pushing in more intensely. One of the things to watch out for here is to make sure that your translation is on object mode so that it actually is pushing in on the axis you want it to push in on. So when I'm done, I probably want to start a little further back to get more of that action. So I'm going to pull back just a hair. And then by the time the shot's over, I want to have pushed in maybe that far. I don't know. Let's see. Let's buffer it again and see if that helps a little bit. Again, all we're trying to do is just sort of up the tenseness of the moment here. And one of the greatest ways to do that is with camera. Camera is so important. Okay, now this is feeling a little bit more intense. Like as he's going to be coming through and stepping through that, his body's rotating, but we really get the sense that something intense is about to happen here. So that helped a lot. Let's go ahead and get some of this axe animation going here. Again, I'm going to save really quick just to make sure we don't lose any of the progress that we have. Yeah. So typically, like I said, I wouldn't do this in a scene. I wouldn't go off the script and try to do keys in between, but this action is something that I want to make sure I get right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put keys in between some of these moments that, more action is happening on this axe than is happening in his body. So I'm going to have to break it out. And I don't want to have the headache of trying to keep up with what's actually happening in his body, Because if I try to key everything together, it'll get messy. So what I'm going to do is going to put some breakdowns here and here to try to figure out what's actually happening with this arm. So I think in my mind, what's happening is this is sort of coming up. So this axe is sort of coming up and it's got a lot of weight. And so the next pose happens over here. So what happens in between, I'm imagining, and again, I'm just sort of guessing, guys, this is part of the process. You have to figure out what your animation's actually going to be as you go along, but that feels pretty good. And then what I want him to do is sort of flourish behind his arm. And the way I plan on accomplishing that is on this pose right here, I'm actually going to have him open his fingers. So he's sort of letting go of the axe itself and it can sort of free spin behind him. So let me hide this camera again. I'm going to grab all of this guy's fingers and open them on this main body pose that we had. So there's more elegant ways of selecting just the controls that you want. There's pickers and all kinds of things. I'm sort of old school when it comes to this. If there's something I go back to and I want to grab a bunch of times, I'll do it. But generally speaking, like I'll just select the things that I want. Something I'm noticing right here is that my hand pose from over here I didn't key it everywhere. So let me just do that really quick. Middle mouse drag, key. Now that hand pose is everywhere. So when I go back to this one where I want to open everything, it's looking good. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab all of these attributes and hit 0. And that should open the hand. That's all I'm really trying to do is just open that hand. And I need to hide the thumb in a way, or at least get it up out of the way. So let me see. Maybe I'll do something like that. We'll see if that works. Now I don't want just a generic hand pose. I probably should get these fingers together, have it be more intentional. It's not just a zeroing out of poses. I actually want this to feel like, something that's intentional. And then what's going to happen from here is this axe is going to kind of spin. This is what I'm imagining in my head. It's going to kind of spin like, I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but like that, it's sort of rotating around the thumb, Let's see. And then sort of like that. And then back to sort of the main position that it was in when it started. I don't know. We're going to see how that works. So like this sort of a thing. Okay. So obviously there's an issue there. I just need to get into the rotate this up, sort of like that. Now, I did not key those fingers to stay open, so that's why the fingers closed there, but we can fix that really easily. By just going in here, grabbing these keys for the hand pose and making sure they stay open. Yeah, no, we're not going to save. See, I'm not taking my own advice. So again, this sort of rotates like that. I need to go back and adjust individual poses to make it feel like this is believable. And sort of get this back up into place. Let's see if that looks all right. Hey, that's getting closer. Closer to what I was imagining, but I feel like this needs to rotate out this way a little bit. And thumb needs to come in. This needs to come in. Let's see if that works. Yeah, that's the general idea, right? So, if I scrub through this, what I need to go do now is I need to go make sure that this is in stepped mode because we don't want to see, you don't want to see animation, too much animation. I still want these on poses. I don't want to see animation happening when everything else is in stepped mode. So I want to make sure it's still in stepped. And I want to make sure that this flail that I'm doing, see, this is in splined right now. I want to make sure it kind of stays in step 2. Okay, let's see what that looks like let's just see what this looks like stepped through with these extra poses in there for what's happening with the axe. So that's looking pretty cool. The thing I'm noticing is I actually want all that action with the hand to happen sooner because it's getting cut off by the end of the shot. And like, I actually want to see that like flourish happen before the end of the shot. So how do you do that? Like, how do you how do you move that animation to happen sooner? And the best way to do that would just be to grab all of those keys right here for all of the stuff that you want to happen sooner, which is great that we're working, generally speaking, and keying everything here, keying everything here. So what I can do is I can actually grab all of that and I'm going to push it to happen sooner, which means I'm going to leave a gap at the end where like I haven't figured out what's going to go there yet now that we're pushing all this sooner. So all this is going to happen here. And I think that's about when I want it to happen in time, so we have a chance to see it. So let me try to buffer this again and play blast this. The thing is I want to keep it spinning, so I got to figure out how to do that. So that's looking cooler though, because it looks like he's coming at us. We get a chance to see it before the end of the shot. And so I need to figure out what's going to happen there at the end. It's going to come through. I think we'll just have it keep spinning, you know? I think we'll just have it keep spinning. I'm jumping over to the chat real quick. Sorry, I can't have it all up at the same time, but Red Eye Studios, thanks for joining. Jake Jones, appreciate you, man. Rhythm, holding it down in the chat section, appreciate you. So I'm going to go ahead and add this animation in really quick. So let's see what that looks like as we're continuing through this process. And what I'm going to do is he sort of has it spinning. I might refine this a little bit because I don't love this pose right here. We're losing it. Whoops. Let me grab the axe itself. I had all the keys selected. Want to keep that nice silhouette, right? Like we want to make sure that visually speaking, even if something's spinning quickly, very quickly I can identify what's happening. So I'm going to go back in here and plus this pose a little bit. See, that's getting obscure. Can't really tell what that is. I'm going to adjust this and fake it. We're faking this a little bit. This pose actually probably should end up a little further down. So what I'm going to do here is grab that. And I'm going to delete this key to see. This is a good opportunity to talk about jumping back between splined and stepped animation, because here I can use spline to my advantage by seeing what the computer would do here. And here I see that to get between these poses, it has its own solve for that situation, which I actually like. I think that's a pretty good interpolation that the computer used. I would just tweak it a little bit by rotating, but I'm going to save that pose. That's nice. And then we're right back basically to where we started over here. Oh, where is it? Right here. So I'm going to keep this, and then I'm going to copy this pose down here, and we'll just keep it spinning and see what happens. So keep spinning. Yeah, cool. So let me throw that back and everything's back in step. So you can use spline to your advantage sometimes just to see what the computer figures out on the in-between poses. But generally speaking now, what this should do is it should just keep that axe spinning. So let's see what this is feeling like. Cool. So it's starting to feel like it's really spinning in his hand, which is nice. Um, it's crashing through his thumb a little bit, and I can adjust the pose on that. But generally speaking, this is feeling pretty good. Um, what I would do now is I'm probably going to get in and start messing with some of the poses on his shoulders, because I feel like if you really step through something, you would your shoulders kind of go down and sort of rise up. And I want that intimidation factor there. So what I'm going to do, and this is just my process, guys. This is not like, there's no hard and fast rule of like how you do different aspects of animation. I kind of take things as they come and as I notice them. And one of the things I'm noticing is he steps out of this thing, I'm not feeling like his shoulders are interacting the way that I would want them to. So I've got to go. I should probably turn the beard off for a second so I can see where his shoulder control is. Okay, there it is. Let's turn his beard back on because people are going to get scared if they see our dwarf without a beard. But now I have to hunt for it. Why is this so hard to find? I think I have it. I have it? Let's see. Yeah, found it. Cool. So as he steps down, remember he was sort of stepping through this pose. This is the down pose. So I'm going to have his shoulder sort of coming down a little bit. I'm actually going to have both shoulders coming down, but I'm just going to work with this first one. And as he rises up, I really want this shoulder to sort of, I might translate it a little bit too. I really want this shoulder to sort of pop up in a posture that is intimidating, but it's also reinforcing this idea that he's coming up in space. And because I'm working with IK hands, that means I'm gonna have to run down here and adjust the hand because now his arm feels like it's straightened out. It feels unnatural. So I'm gonna have to adjust this hand up in space. And find a pose that makes sense. So we're going to adjust his hand pose throughout because he has a straight arm, which is not what he should have. I have a little bit of bend in it. And as he comes up out of this, we want a little bit as well. As that shoulder comes up, we want the arm to come up with it. Like it's almost like he's going to hit him or something, you know? I'm also noticing that his elbow is a little bit too horizontal for me. I'm gonna tuck that back in, right? That feels more natural. Nobody sort of stands like that. So tuck that back in. I might actually copy that pose down the chain here. Yeah, now he feels like he's getting, he's sort of posturing a little bit. That's the difference. So same body pose, different shoulder pose. I mean, you kind of see the difference, right, in terms of body posture and sort of what he's insinuating by the pose that he's making. So I'm going to grab this, copy that to the end, so we have the same pose for that arm as it goes through. And I lost the shoulder again. So let me just I'm going to turn the beard off for a second so that I can find this easily. There we go. All right, so let's see. I'm going to grab all the controls here now, make sure we're all stepped, and see what happens here. So one of the things you notice I'll do a lot is I'm sort of play blasting a lot and rendering this out and making sure that I'm getting the general sense for how this thing's playing. Ignore his beard disappearing. But that's the general action and motion that I want, right? It's like, it feels like it feels like he's stepping towards us in a menacing way. I might actually push the camera a little bit more. Um, I'm feeling like the axe at the beginning is not moving as fast as I want it to. And I also feel like it's a little lighter than I want it to be. So how am I going to solve that? Um, as this comes up, what I'm thinking, sort of what's coming to me right now, is I want his wrist to be straight, but at the same time, like I think it would be okay to make it feel a little heavier by just rotating this down a little bit. And I think the thought process there is just that if something's a little heavier and the weight of this thing is going to be mostly on that blade, right? It's like, I don't know if you've held an axe, but they're sort of top heavy. And so if they're top heavy, you're not going to be holding the thing straight up like this. It's like it's going to sort of break your wrist in a sense, in terms of how that silhouette looks. So I'm just going to push that a little bit and lag that metal heavy portion of the blade behind a little bit. And one of the things I'm also going to do for clarity's sake, we're always looking to maintain a good silhouette, is I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to rotate the axe. Our hands do that, sort of inherently as we're holding something. It's not stiff in our hand. Our fingers are sort of manipulating things as we have things in our hand, especially spinning them. Like, you wouldn't believe real time what your fingers can do as you're holding something in order to manipulate it. And to make it feel realistic, you have to take some of that stuff into account. So I'm going to cheat this a little bit and rotate it so that we're always getting a nice flat silhouette to this axe, because otherwise you'll lose it. So I'm just going to go back through here and sort of make sure that we're getting a nice silhouette on things. See, we lose it right here. It's okay to lose it for a second, but I'm watching the arcs a little bit just to make sure this feels like it's somewhat realistic. Okay. May lose it a little bit here, but yeah, maybe that's a little bit far. Okay. Let me fix this beard turning off and on. I'm going to turn this off. Grab the beard, and I'm going to turn you off for a second because you are weighing down the scene. Okay, let's see. Go back through this and see if this helped at all. Whoops. Let me cancel that because it looks like there were keys, spline keys on the axe again. I don't want to see that stuff. I want to keep everything stepped. So let's try it again. Okay, that's feeling cooler, right? That's feeling much cooler. It's feeling pretty intimidating. I like what's happening. I don't know. What do you guys think? Jump in the chat. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'd love to address some of them. We've got a few minutes left here at the end. Now, this is not splined animation. I still have things in stepped, but you're getting a sense of what the action feels like. And if I turn the other guy on and I turn the lighting. Let's not turn the lighting on. Let's turn this on. Let's throw beard back on this guy just for now so we get the sense of, like, generally what it should look like. And let's watch it down. Feel free to jump in the comments and ask any questions that you might have about this process. Basically, what I would do from here on, from this point on, is I'll turn it into splines so everything's moving on every frame, and then you start to get finished, polished animation. But this is the process for that. You start to just break it down, and you break it down further, and you break it down further, and this is what we end up with. Just asking in the comments section if anybody has any questions. Rhythm, I know you've got a question. Feel free to to drop it in the chat section. But yeah, that's feeling pretty cool, right? And I think what I'd probably do too is with the time we have left, I'm probably going to get back in here. And we talked about the lower body a little bit, and you can actually see it here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to have him step with that foot because, like I said before, I sort of have him, generally speaking, sort of moving his foot. But I'm going to have his knee move up in the air. I'm going to have his foot plant. Typically when you're doing a step, your foot comes up, moves forward, steps, plants, and the body comes forward, right? It's like, and then the foot is there. But one of the things that happens as well, and we'll do this in just like sort of a micro level because I don't want to end up breaking down the main action too much, is we're going to get him rotating onto sort of as your foot comes back. One of the things your body automatically does is compensates for that weight. So if you'll notice, if you stand up and you pick your foot up, your body kind of rotates away from that foot. So one of the things I'd want to add into this to make it feel realistic is as that foot sort of comes up right here, what I'd want to do is I would actually rotate his body back away from us a little bit like that. And which means I'm going to have to move his hand, of course. His hand should be hiding more than this. We don't want to feature his hand. It should be back here somewhere, hiding behind his leg. But I'll just copy that pose because we don't need it in front. Do you see what I mean? Like, I don't want to do it too much, but you get the sense that if we're trying to be a little bit realistic here with the action, there should be the sense that there's a weight shift at the beginning before he sort of, and then, this upper body would lag behind a little bit as he steps. So we would sort of do this sort of, not maybe that's too much. Maybe something like this. And then as he steps into it, I wouldn't have him lean so much. So he sort of leans, he's sort of starting to lean this way, but maybe corrects a little bit as he comes up. So let's see, what does that look like? So something like that, just adding some more realism to it. I would probably have his hand sort of rock forward because as your body comes forward, it's like that hand is probably going to start rotating towards us a little bit. Just things like that. You have to think about actual body mechanics as you're trying to get something that's a bit more realistic, and so this is sort of happening. I would need to add, what I would probably do here is have this pose at the end that is happening right here, but I don't have the body continuing to move. Whoops. It's like I broke something. How did I do that? Cool. That's fun. Welcome to Maya. Oh, I see. I'm going to put this back here. There we go. I have this pose at the end where he's not moving forward anymore. But as I start to break down more animation, I'd probably go ahead and just keep him moving forward a little bit. So grab the hands, grab the body, and make sure that I'm on world mode. Sort of bring him forward in space just a little bit more, just to keep that action going. Then we would bring the hand up, maybe just a little bit. And the other thing we should be doing is moving this hand. It hasn't moved at all. So as he comes down, this would sort of do this, maybe something like that. Yeah, that's starting to feel better. And maybe this hand sort of breaks the silhouette a little bit so he feels more menacing. Yeah, I like that. Let's see what that plays like. In the meantime, I'm gonna pop back over for chat. Would his other hand act as a counterbalance? Yeah. Typically we do that, right? We do that kind of naturally, and that's, I guess, what I'm getting at with this hand sort of coming over here is like it does it. We do that naturally, you know. And it's not perfect right now, but I would start to really get in there and sort of solidify that as I move forward to make sure it felt like that. So, I know I moved the hand out a little bit here, but I could probably start moving it out a little bit more, even. Could do something like that. Um, let's see what that feels like. Yeah, that feels right. That's a good thought, rhythm. So yeah, that's the scene, and the fun thing about this is, this is just the basic animation. I haven't splined it. I haven't done anything cool to it really yet. But as I add motion blur and all the cool fun things that make it look really good, this ends up being animation that feels really fluid and feels really really nice and dynamic. And in scene, as I continue to refine it, the finished product, which you're going to see in the short film, we'll be able to look back and sort of see how this sort of process, how to take someone through this process and understand the fundamentals of what's actually happening. So that's it. We're right at time. I am going to see if we have any last minute questions. Yes, it is like a Rubik's Cube on steroids. It is. You're thinking about the principles of animation. You're thinking about, in some cases, you're thinking about gravity and how it pertains to the thing that you're animating. I mean, it's really crazy. Something I kind of want to see. I'm not sure if this is going to look good or what's going to happen when I do it, but I would like to show a little bit of what maybe the splined animation is starting to look like. Again, you have to be really careful of going into spline too soon because these curves could literally be all over the place. That doesn't look too bad. Yeah, let's see how that plays. So it shouldn't look perfect yet because I should be refining a lot more in that stepped phase first. But this is what it's starting to look like. That's not bad. Like, that's looking pretty good, right? If you get the fundamentals in place with those poses, when you watch the fluid animation, it makes a little bit more sense. The next step, which I'm not going to get into, maybe we'll do that in the next portion, episode 3. I'll get in there and start refining the timing to tighten things up so that the flourish feels faster and the animation's a little bit more snappy. And right now it sort of feels like it's sort of just floating through the action. But yeah, the next stage, now that you've got the sort of poses working for you, you can get in there and really start tightening things up so things feel, you've got a bit more style to what you're doing, right? So that will be episode 3. So thanks for joining me, guys. If you have any questions, you can feel free to drop them after this has already been recorded, and I'll try to get to them and answer them as quickly as I can. But thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed episode 2, and I'll catch you on the next one. I will see you guys later.